normal people become terrified of criminals.
Shots were just fired. Police just came out and told us, and we're headed there right now.
They become terrified of their own government.
False U.S. demographic changes. So they go on to bring up the Great Replacement theory, and I love how they do this. ABC News says Ramaswamy also boosted the Great Replacement theory, the white nationalist belief that immigration policies are designed specifically to dilute the political power of white Americans by making them a smaller share of the population. The idea has been elevated by media figures like Tucker Carlson and inspired mass violence in 2015 Charleston, South Carolina church massacre and in the 2019 shooting at Walmart. Ramaswamy alleged during the debate that the theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party platform. How about I just play this video of Van Jones for you, and we'll start breaking this down.
Asking the white majority to do something is difficult. And I think it'd be easier if we just acknowledge that it's difficult. No ethnic majority group in 10,000 years of human history that I can find ever went from being a majority to being a minority and liked it. And that's basically the request from the racial justice left, is that we want the white majority to go from being a majority to being a minority and like it. That's a tough request. And the reality is that change is hard. Change that you want is hard. Change that is good is hard.
So the racial justice left, according to him, is asking the white majority to go from being a majority to a minority. There's only two ways that happens. One, mass migration, and white people not having kids. If they're asking white people to do this, they're outright saying, we want a policy of mass migration and we don't want you to have kids.
There's a third way, it's genocide.
Well, right. I suppose, in my context, I'm talking about legal. What's currently going on right now in this country.
It's clearly
there are
not
two methods.
Peaceful ways to do it.
But we have this great article from Newsweek. Democrats are massive hypocrites on so-called Great Replacement theory. And this is by Pedro Gonzalez from 2022 in Newsweek, where he breaks down statements from Joe Biden and many other Democrats where they're outright basically saying this. They're outright saying it. He says the mass shooting in Buffalo, New York was an atrocity. The killer will pay for his life. The suspect left behind a 180-page document outlining a schizophrenic worldview. We get that. Biden and the company latched onto it. But here's the problem. Democrats and progressive activists, based on their own rhetoric over the years, subscribe to replacement theory more than anyone else. As Vice President Biden himself said, that a constant and unrelenting stream of immigration would reduce Americans of white European stock to an absolute minority, and that was a source of our strength. I'm not going to go through the whole article because Pedro actually brings up a ton of other excellent examples, but I think right there, when you have Joe Biden, who is now the president, saying a source of our strength is an unrelenting stream of immigration reducing white Americans to a minority. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say, Vivek's not wrong.
Well, he took three quotes out of context and stuffed them all together into one sentence. So I would like to see, I'm not saying Joe Biden's not a racist, but I would like to see the full context of those statements. And also, now, when we talk about Great Replacement, I think it should be repurposed to be like, it's not designed to specifically dilute the power of the white Americans. It's designed to dilute the power of citizens, of the American citizens. That's what's happening. That's the problem.
Yeah, I think it is bigger. I think it is bigger in many ways, but I also think this has all the hallmarks of cultural Marxism, right?
There you go.
Cultural Marxism is designed to topple the cultural hegemony or whoever is perceived to be at the top. It's interesting. I started studying this a couple years ago. There's a pastor named Dr. Vodi Bakum. He's a big black dude that looks like he could play. He was a football player on the rise, and then he became a pastor. And he does this phenomenal series and sermon on cultural Marxism and how he went on CNN one time. They invited him on after Obama took the White House. And he said that the anchor was basically asking Dr. Bakum, hey, do you think that race relations in the U.S. are going to get better now that we have a black president? And Vodi Bakum said, no, they're going to get worse. And it surprised the anchor. And Vodi Bakum went on to say, it's going to get worse because Obama sat under a cultural Marxist pastor named Jeremiah Wright for a very long time. And if he goes back and he kind of gives a history lesson about cultural Marxism and how they tried, Marxism to destroy the West, traditional Marxism, where you pit people against each other economically, right? You have the haves and the have-nots. Well, that didn't work here in the West because everybody was too prosperous. So what they do, they just reversed, they just made a slight change to the ingredients. Instead of dividing us all up on, economic classes, we're just going to divide them all up by race. And it's working tremendously. I mean, if you go and you look at how divided we are on race, and it's just, to me, it's just disgusting. Like, but, when I listen to Van Jones right there, and what he's saying about, I want white, what I want for white people, and to go from being, on top of things, or what do you say, Tim?
From being the majority
to being the minority, and to like it. That has, to me, all the hallmarks of cultural Marxism.
The statement itself is not just an explanation of what they're doing, but an attempt at incitement to trigger reactions, which they can then use to gain more power and take advantage of this. You have Van Jones outright saying I don't know if he's saying but he does say the racial justice left is asking white people to become a minority, which Ian does bring up there as a third way. But in American politics, there's mass migration and birth control, advocacy against having kids and things like this. That's actively happening. And so Van Jones saying that then gets people on the right, people like Vivek Ramaswamy, to be like, hey, this is something Democrats have espoused. And then the media immediately comes out and says they're conspiracy theorists and they're racists. They're white nationalists and they're Nazis.
Yeah. To Ian's point, though, I think it's even bigger than, the replacement stuff. And I do think that's a part of it. But he said it's almost like they're trying to destroy it, right? I think they try and destroy this country every way they possibly can, because I don't think they like the country. I think that they want it changed.
Yes.
I think that they want a top-down totalitarian control. They want it to, be some utopia that has, a little bit of socialism, a little bit of communism in it. And as long as Americans feel free, prosperous, we have a constitution, we have the ability to defend ourselves, we have freedom of speech, all of that stands in their way. And so I think that it's death by 1,000 cuts. And I think that that's why it just feels like we're living in bizarro land.
Patrick Bet-David talks a lot about choosing your enemies wisely, which I think is fascinating, because I'm like, I don't have any enemies. I don't want to have any enemies, but I'm like, who's my enemy? Thinking about today, CCP? I'm not sure. I don't want my enemies to be you, or like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who represents the Democratic Party in a way that, I find admirable in some ways. At least it's youthful. But like, I don't want my enemies to be in our country. And then I'm like, am I just being xenophobic? But do you think the CCP is involved in this Marxist obliteration of American culturalism?
Wasn't?
Do you think that the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party, that's as far as I'll go. Do you think that they're like the masterminds of this?
No. It doesn't take a person. So like it's an ideology. So like, how like if you go to a Catholic mass, right? Like if you go to a Catholic mass in the U.S. and then one in somewhere in South America, they're going to be similar, because Catholicism has stuff that you are supposed to do to be Catholic. The leftist ideology that he outlines, and he's 100% right in my opinion. The leftist ideology that he outlines, like, there is a whole structure that people follow. So it doesn't matter that you don't need a person that's top downing it, right? They believe in an ideology, and so if you believe in the ideology, you follow the tenets of the ideology, and you don't need one particular person to dictate to you, because you do the things that Marxists do. You look at the world through a Marxist lens.
That just intensifies the value of the culture war. Like if it's an innate emergent phenomenon that's spreading like wildfire on the internet, there needs to be a better wildfire.
It's not so much emergent. It is people that believe it that are telling other people. Right now, the conduit has been basically the academy, basically. Schools have been.
Yeah, academia.
Yeah.
Like, have you guys have, I'm sure, watched the Yuri Bezmenov videos. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Where he talks about, ideological subversion, right? And he's like, I mean, if you watch these videos, I mean, Tim, when do you think those were made? Like the 90s?
It was the 80s.
Yeah, the 80s. This guy was in the U.S. at this time, KGB defector, saying that, you silly Americans, you think that, the KGB, we spent most of our resources on James Bond espionage because it's sexy and it's in the movies. He's like, no, only about maybe 15% of our budget went to that stuff. Right. Most of it went to ideological subversion, putting people in your institutions, your culture, academia, and teaching this crap, these ideologies. And I think that's what you're seeing right now.
But I think I've had this debate 800,000 times actually, but I think the actual issue is big tech and social media, and it's not so much the universities. I think the universities are a component, obviously, because you see all these videos where someone sends their kids to college and their kid comes back angry, shaved head, weird tattoos and things like that, face tattoos or whatever.
Right.
But what we're seeing with the rise of cultural Marxism and things like this started around the world all around the same time, which is more indicative of social media creating the phenomenon than anything else. And there's actually a simple explanation. So the early social media algorithms favor anything that makes people angry. And so you had libertarians, and I think even like Paul Joseph Watson and like Alex Jones were posting police brutality videos because it got people riled up. They'd watch the video and then complain about it.
Right.
And so if you were a right libertarian, you were complaining about the same stuff that eventually Black Lives Matter started complaining about. But what happens? Police brutality on its own only gets 100,000 views. Racist police brutality gets 1 million views. So the algorithm started favoring content that pushed things like racism is bad, homophobia is bad, anything that would seem like an injustice. And then you had the example I always cite is Mike.com, which started off as like a Ron Paul libertarian website, turned into a leftist social justice website because of social media algorithms. You write an article that's in favor of right libertarian, anti-government, it does okay. You write a social justice piece, it's got racist, sexist, anti-gay in the title, bang, it's getting 1 million views. So the company starts putting all their resources into hiring writers to write all that stuff. And then instantly around the world, you see this in the LexisNexis data, every country experiences, except for like Iran and North Korea, they have weird fluctuations, but almost every single country with access to the basic internet we do sees the same rise in racism, privilege, intersectionality, feminism, etc., all rapidly happening at the exact same time.
Yeah. When I started making internet videos in 2006, I would make a video called like, "We are all the same." And like, if you believe you are, then you are. Like that kind of mindset. It was that weird postmodernist thing. And they do really well. The videos would do really well with like, and the people that were watching them, I don't know all of them, but I think a lot of them were suffering in their lives. So it sounded good to like, yes, we are all the same, but we're not. We're all similar, but we're not all the same. But that just resonates so powerfully when you say something like that with confidence, especially if you're someone that people like, that they aspire to be like.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.